Good evening and welcome to Turning Point Tonight. My name is Jobob. If building a new addition to a government building is fascism, California is clearly full of it. We are revisiting the conversation of whether or not Disney can be redeemed after new filings for their big conglomerate financial mandated reporting. We're going to talk to Chef Andrew Gruel, Senator Ron Johnson, Savannah Hernandez. Actually, I lied. Savannah Hernandez is a little bit later, but Monica Paige, Turning Point's White House Correspondent. Basically, what I'm trying to say is we got a jam-packed show for you tonight. Turning Point Tonight, where together we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point Tonight. TPT at TPUSA.com is the email address if you'd like to send your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. We don't mind if people are wrong, especially in our inbox. TPT at TPUSA.com. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get exclusive content not seen here in Real America's Voice, just because there's so much to talk about, so little time. And our time is fleeting here, so we're going to get right to it. I want to bring you Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time for Turning Point Tonight.
Thanks for having me on.
So in this newfound transparency movement with the government, obviously regarding the Epstein files, you've been fighting for transparency in a lot of different facets, specifically around Arctic frost, kind of trying to get all of the information out from what the Biden administration was doing when they were in power to yourself, the Trump officials. What does that look like going forward? And do you think this, again, newfound fervor for transparency in other facets will move on to all of the things that we'd like to see overall?
But what I can say is Trump's appointees, his secretaries, other people of his that he's nominated and have been confirmed, they are absolutely dedicated to full transparency. Mm-hmm. The problem we have is you still have deep state partisan actors burrowed in, doing everything they can to sabotage those efforts. And they can sabotage it 16 ways on Sunday. First of all, they just don't cooperate. They probably know where documents are, but they're not telling anybody. I mean, the fact that we found some pretty relevant documents, or we didn't find, but they found documents in burn bags in a skiff that nobody even knew about. That's a concern. So I don't know how many documents have been destroyed. My guess is quite a few have. I'd say the good news is, again, Trump's appointees, people like Bobby Kennedy, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, they want this exposed. They want to get this information out. They want to find these documents, turn them over to Congress, as well as use them in potential criminal prosecutions. So that's the good news. But you still got the deep state that looks at any administration as this too shall pass. But the problem we have as Republicans is most of these are partisan leftists. They'll cooperate with, for example, the Biden administration. They don't cooperate very well with the Trump administration.
Now, what are and feel free to enlighten me, because I actually don't know. Are there any mechanics that can compel folks to do certain things, and are those at the disposal of senators? Is that the administration? How could that work from a compelling standpoint?
Well, as chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee Investigation, I have unilateral subpoena authority, so I can issue subpoenas. I have. It's very difficult to enforce those subpoenas, though. Generally, it's very difficult for us to get those things passed through the Senate, to go to court, to have the courts compel the testimony, as opposed to the FBI. They're using the judicial system, and they can use the courts to compel testimony right away from their subpoena. So it's different. We generally use those subpoenas. Nobody really wants a subpoena from Congress, so we kind of use that ability to hopefully get more voluntary cooperation. But the other good news about, for example, destruction of documents, you can destroy paper documents. In today's world, though, it's very difficult to destroy all the electronic copies and trail of those things. So, what, for example, these agencies need is they need computer scientists, people familiar with forensic analysis and audits. They also need a team of lawyers, which they're having a hard time staffing up because of all the lawfare engaged in by the weaponization of the Biden and Obama administration. It doesn't take a dictator very many people to hang in the public square before the population kind of falls in line. And that's, in effect, what the Democrats have done with their lawfare against other lawyers who've been disbarred or blackballed, or, for example, Judge Troops in Wisconsin. They're trying to destroy the man. It's really sick what Democrats are doing to him.
Well, and I guess that kind of leads into the other thing I'm curious about, just kind of gauging the political culture and the climate. Say, pretty damning things were to actually come out. With the compliant media, do you think the populace would actually believe any of it? Do you think it would make much of a difference? Sorry to be cynical here, but that's my take on the political climate that we're currently in.
Well, have you seen the Washington Post return their Pulitzer Prize for the Russian collusion hoax? Have you seen them out, people that served them up all the false information? So no, I mean, the legacy of the corporate media, I mean, they're not reformed. They're still committed leftists and pretty much the communication wing of the Democrat Party. The good news is we do have alternate media. We have podcasts like this and other sources. So let's face it, the media is losing the trust of the American people in record numbers, quite honestly, and people are getting their news from alternate sources. Now, the problem you have with AI, with deepfakes, that kind of stuff, it is becoming very difficult to discern what is true and what is not true. We all have our biases, confirmation biases, that type of thing. So, we will readily hop on something that we believe is true when it may not be. So it's really getting difficult in today's society to figure out, okay, what truly is the truth.
Yeah, it's we hope that the trust in the mainstream media goes faster than we could ever expect, but unfortunately, I'm not entirely sure how quick it actually can go. To transition, not my gender, just the topic. You've been an outspoken critic of Obamacare for obviously a number of years now. It got passed, so we found out what's in it, and what's in it turns out to be terrible. And the Affordable Health Care Act is ironically named because it made healthcare increasingly unaffordable. You've been a staunch critic of it. What are the kind of the next steps as we're starting to see the Affordable Care Act unravel in front of our eyes and really effectively help no one?
What I've always said, and this dates back to 2017 when everybody else was saying repeal and replace. Unfortunately, we didn't have a good replace.
Yeah.
I've always been saying, no, operative statement should be, let's repair the damage done by Obamacare and transition to a system that actually works. The reason I use that, first of all, when you say repair the damage, people go, well, what damage? Let me show you the ways. And I held a hearing last week assessing the damage done by Obamacare to, just the consolidation of these industries, making them less competitive, which drives up costs, the harm to disabled children with Medicaid Advantage adults, crowding them out of coverage, for example. And then, of course, just the skyrocketing premiums on the individual market, which they pretty well destroyed. They got rid of high-risk pools that could have been modified to take care of people with pre-existing conditions. But they forced that small percentage, about 7% of Americans, to bear the full cost of covering people with pre-existing conditions, one of the many reasons why premiums are skyrocketing, which they are hiding with the subsidies. So the people on the exchanges, they only know what their net premium is, which in general is, I think, overall about 10% of the gross premium. So American taxpayers picking up 90% of the Obamacare premiums. So people are seeing just a fraction of what those things cost. That's why Democrats are digging their heels in and insisting that we continue the enhanced premiums, which just cover that up even more and for more people.
Obviously the big kind of slogan was repeal and replace. You repeal and replace. You kind of hit on it a little bit earlier. Being a free market extremist, was why not just repeal? Do you think there is any political will to just repeal, or does there have to be something on the back end to effectively replace what's being lost, which is subsidies by the taxpayers?
Well, people do want to see Americans get health coverage, right? They want them to get health care. They want people with pre-existing conditions to be covered. Now, sometimes you can set conditions on that, like you have to try and maintain insurance coverage. You can't sit there all your life not have insurance, then come in when you finally get sick. So, you need some protections that way. But that's something you have to provide. I think just politically, but I think morally as well. But there are ways of doing it, and that's why I say you utilize high risk pools. That's where everybody that is insured pays a small percentage in to cover those people in the high risk pools. People can move in and out of those. But again, the overall root cause is the third party payer system. Nobody knows what anything costs. They know what their insurance premiums are, what their taxes are. But we've taken all the benefit of a free market system out of healthcare. We've also done the same thing in education. Two areas of our economy that we, by and large, don't like the results. Yeah, well, no kidding, because the free market guarantees three things: the best possible quality, the best possible level of customer service, and the lowest possible price and cost. Like, it's not perfect, but it's far better than anything controlled by government, which has been a disaster under Obamacare. So it's about returning consumerism into healthcare. That's things like health savings accounts. It's, you actually could bill reform on Obamacare, because Obamacare insurance is literally the catastrophic plans that insurance ought to be. But before Obamacare, those things were dirt cheap. Now those premiums are, they're literally selling insurance that really is insurance, because people can't even afford to pay for the deductible before they get into the insurance coverage. So again, Obamacare has been a complete disaster. The problem we have is the folks on the other side of the aisle, Democrats, are in a complete state of denial. I held my hearing assessing the damage of Obamacare. My ranking member, Blumenthal, said, "Where are the millions of people harmed by Obamacare? I don't see any in the hearing room." Then he went on to say, "I don't know anybody harmed by Obamacare," to which I could point. Your own witness, this mom from Madison, is a victim. She lost her employer coverage care in 2016, went to a silver plan, $1,000 a month, couldn't afford it, had to go to a bronze plan, $14,000 deductible. They had healthcare issues, had to take out an $18,000 home equity line of credit. I mean, their own witness was a victim of Obamacare, and he's sitting there going, wow, I don't know anybody harmed by Obamacare. So they're in a complete state of denial. It's up to us to really point out, again, the damage done, and then focus on those free market reforms, really all revolving around consumerism, putting the patient in charge, making the patient demand for price transparency. Don't pass a law, you got to be transparent. No, make people pay for the first dollar coverages and have insurance be for the catastrophic instances.
Wow, that's actually a great explanation of what's going on. I really appreciate that. Senator Johnson, I asked this somewhat, I'm actually mostly serious about this, although I recognize it's somewhat of a funny question. The government was shut down for 44 days. 12% of my year, I did not have my beloved government. How can I go about getting a discount, a probated rebate for that period of time where I unfortunately did not have government?
Well, first of all, unless you were traveling by air, did you even notice?
I was going to say, I honest to God had no idea.
You got the same benefit from government when it was shut down versus when it was open. And I love the fact that Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education, is pointing that out. So did you notice when you were shut down? Did you see any impact on education? Of course you didn't. What we hopefully can see, if we can start limiting the cost of government, how about maybe reduce deficits, less spending, not mortgaging our children's future to the extent that we are. So no, I mean, I think that's the danger Democrats really had in terms of pushing this shutdown. First of all, they stepped in it in terms of Obamacare. They've given us the opportunity to highlight what a miserable failure it's been, but also the impact, because the shutdown was run by a Republican president who wanted to minimize the pain. When Democrats are in charge of the administration, they're of course always going to blame Republicans for the shutdown, and so they're going to make it as painful as possible.
Yeah,
you shut down the things that people actually value, like parks, the Trump administration tried to make it as painless as possible. That's why I think most people didn't even, they had no impact from the shutdown until it got to the air traffic controllers and air travel. And then let's face it, that's when government opened back up.
Well, yeah, and that's when Democrats had to capitulate, which is exactly what I think was intended. So as far as my 12% income tax rebate, I'll take that as a maybe, but it probably not.
We're 38 trillion in debt. Sorry, we got to keep that.
Yeah, don't remind me. That just it makes me cry a little bit inside. Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Super interesting talking to Senator Ron Johnson. Again, I'm holding out hope that I'm going to get my 12% rebate for the government that I did not get for 44 days this year. Not crossing my fingers, though. We got a lot to catch you up on of the news of the day. Chef Andrew Gruel joins us next segment to discuss whether or not Disney is redeemable, which has been an ongoing discussion on this show. Also, California is spending an exorbitant amount of money on a thing that they probably don't need, but I repeat myself because it's California. TBT@tpusa.com is the email. Also go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just type in JOBOB across any of the social media platforms. You'll get all of the Turning Point Tonight exclusive content specifically on the internet, because we don't fit everything we can on this particular show, even though we'd like to. So we have to go to the internet. Turning Point Tonight's YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram, X account, all of those. Find us there. We'll be right back after the break with Chef Andrew Gruel. Don't go away. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight. We're together. We are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. TPT@tpusa.com is the email address if you'd like to send your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. It's okay to be wrong as long as you send it to our inbox at tpt@tpusa.com. You can also comment on any of our social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB. You'll be able to find pretty much all of the Turning Point Tonight YouTube channel, Rumble channel, Instagram, Facebook, all of the social medias, where there is an exclusive clip that we do every single day, except for Fridays, that airs only there because we don't have enough time to fit in all the things we want to talk about here on Real America's Voice. Joining me now is a fan favorite, a chef, commentator, comedian, a bunch of different things. Chef Andrew Gruel joins us. Thanks so much for taking the time, man.
It's an honor to be back. Thank you so much.
So you and I, both unfortunately, and producer Glenn and several people related to this show, live behind enemy lines in the deep blue state of California, in which there's a lot of interesting things going on, to say the least, specifically in this regard, and particularly the new Capitol Annex. Now, Chef Gruel, I know that you know that renovating buildings is fascism, as we've seen with the White House. Any renovation at all is fascism. So clearly fascism is going on at the state capitol. There's a big new annex that was originally budgeted for $543 million. The current budget puts it closer to around $1.5 billion, and analysts suggest that they predict it to balloon up to $4 to $5 billion. What do you think about the state of fascist spending in the state capital of California? One, is this new budget increase surprising at all? Two, will all of that money be spent effectively and efficiently? And three, do they need to build a $5 billion addition to the California state capitol?
Well, I think before I pontificate on those points, we should lay the foundation here, because this was passed during COVID, when no one was allowed to even leave their house. But yet the lawmakers got to Sacramento and they pushed this through, while no other legislation that was supposed to help us citizens or prisoners in California was able to push through. They put this low price tag on there because that's what they do, right? That is the algorithm, the modus operandum, the way in which they slip this by the voters, just like the high-speed bullet train and every other project in California. They put a small price tag on there, and then they funnel the funds into the general fund, and then they say we need another $5 billion to finish this project. So that's how it's culminated to this point today. I should mention as well, you're going to love this. So in California, one of the reasons everyone says, how come there's no housing? And, Newsom gets mad at everybody. When they introduced CEQA, which is the Forced Environmental Review, it's the Environmental Quality, Act, the Review Act, Environmental Review, where every single development that gets built, house, whatever it is, has to be reviewed by all these different agencies in California. And that's what layers hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on so many of these projects. And they're used to slow down the development. That was the goal of CEQA. Well, guess what? This is exempt from CEQA. So CEQA, CEQA is great when you want to stop all these other bad guys that perhaps aren't donating to your campaign. But when it comes to us building our own empire in Sacramento, don't worry about CEQA. This reminds me of Diocletian. I don't know if you remember that story in the kind of Roman Empire. I think it was 200 or 300 AD, right before the fall of Rome. He built this massive fortress along the coast of what's today Croatia. And then ultimately that was kind of the sign of bad things to come. It was the peak. And then after that, it fell apart. That's what's happening here. He's building his empire, fortifying it with stupidity and all of our tax dollars, and not giving us any insight into this project, because actually the media has filed public records requests to get all the details on this, and they've rejected them.
Yeah, they have NDAs with the contractors basically saying, hey, you cannot talk to the media about this, which, look, Andrew, if I were king of the world, which I'm running for, by the way, I'm running for king of the world. Please vote for me 2028. I would the clear and obvious thing is, hey, my good friend Andrew is a contractor, and he deserves this contract to build this building. And people would be like, "Oh, does he have any experience building massive structures?" And I would say, "Well, you don't need to worry about that. By the way, Andrew, you're not allowed to talk to any of the media about this contract because, well, that's just the way that California government works. It's ridiculous on its face." To your CEQA comment too, people don't know what CEQA is. Yeah, it is effectively an environmental blockage to everything. Now the libs will say, well, it was passed under Reagan, and yeah, it was. But 2 years later, he said, holy cow, this is being used in ways that I would never anticipated it. I just wanted to get the smog out of Los Angeles. What are you doing? And that is still the standard to this day that is stopping people from building stuff. And I'm sure you see it. Do you see the effects of CEQA in you're a city councilman in Huntington Beach, California. Do you see the effects of this in real life on the ground?
Yep. And I'll tell you what's really funny. So the conservatives realized, oh, well, we're going to use the Democrats' bludgeon as our own tool in our toolbox. So actually, conservatives started using CEQA to try and block high-density, affordable housing projects that were being jammed down on cities. So guess what? Suddenly, the governor came out and said, all the high-density projects in California are exempt from CEQA.
Great. Yeah, and I think that was one of the big updates that happened earlier this year. It was like, hey, we're making moves on CEQA, and yeah, lo and behold, it doesn't actually benefit anybody except for the contractors that are going to get those big affordable housing subsidies. Enough badgering on California. This has actually been a topic of conversation across many multitudes of weeks here at Turning Point tonight, and it's the discussion of whether or not Disney as an entity is redeemable. Interestingly enough, the 10K filings, which is SEC filings, you gotta do that sort of stuff when you're a massive conglomerate. In 2023, in their 10K filings, diversity was mentioned 18 times, inclusion was mentioned 14 times, and equity was mentioned 3 times. In 2022, the year prior, it was mentioned 22 times. Diversity was mentioned 22 times. Inclusion was mentioned 17 times. In the latest 10K filings of Disney, 0 mentions of diversity, 0 mentions of inclusion, 0 mentions of equity, 0 mentions of DEI, and 0 mentions of inclusion and belonging. In your opinion, I've been kind of on the fence. I can be argued either way. Can Disney be redeemed? Are they turning a corner, especially with the 250-year anniversary of the country? They're saying, hey, we're going to be super pro-America themed. Are they redeemable, or is this just a play recognizing the direction of the country and trying to make sure they get that ever valuable dollar?
They're certainly redeemable. Look, people thought X was never redeemable, or Twitter at the time, and then Elon Musk came in. They're going to need new leadership. And I'm not saying we need hyper-partisan leadership. I think leadership that just says, hey, let's wash this all out and go back to what Disney was known for, the legacy brand, Americana, right? So let's take all these buzzwords and maybe we won't kill them. We'll put them on a nice farm in upstate New York and we'll forget about it for a while. Disney wizardry. But the question is that at 12 o'clock, instead of turning into a pumpkin, do all the Disney minions come out and say, well, we might not be using the words in our reports, but they're still stitched into our DNA. And that's what we need to figure out here. Is the simple washing, or as they like to say, reimagining of this report going to produce change, or is it strictly a farce or a veneer to say, hey, guys, we're good to go?
Okay, well, so that's the question. What's your prediction? Where do you think it actually goes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road?
I think the latter. Unfortunately, I think that once the communists get in there and the Bolsheviks get in there, they are like a disease, a cancer that spreads, and you cannot get rid of them because they metastasize so quickly. And that's what's happened in our school boards. That's what's happened in local city governments. And now we're looking down on it from above and saying, oh my gosh, how did this happen? But it also happened in corporate America through a lot of these entry-level positions, the unionization of this thought process, and you can't get rid of it now. So yeah, maybe you can do a little cut, copy, and paste on your end of the year report, but it's there. So I'm going to take the bearish approach on this and say we're screwed.
You are in line with many of the guests. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my sunny, optimistic view of the world, but I really want Disney to come around and be the Disney of the 90s that had all of these really influential movies that they made. But unfortunately, I seem to be the minority in that case, thinking that there's a possibility, as a glimmer of hope. I also very much see your side of the argument that yeah, once the communists get in, they ruin everything, and so you got to tear it down to the studs. So there's that. Chef Gruel, any last thoughts?
No, I'll just tell you what. You want a really good turkey recipe for Thanksgiving? Buy yourself a tri-tip roast.
I meant to, I have it in my notes to ask you about Thanksgiving because I felt like, I got a chef on, I might as well. Okay, are you anti-turkey? I took a ton of flack for going on unnamed cable news show and saying, hey, turkey's overrated. It was because they were super plentiful in the region where Thanksgiving started. But guess what? We have beef now, so let's eat that instead.
Yeah, see, I agree with you. I don't think that turkey's horrible, but I think the traditional way in which it's cooked is horrible. If you're going to cook a turkey, do the leg meat, braise it, separate the breast meat, brine that, do a nice hard rub on there, and treat them as two separate items. And then you can get a nice kind of mole style braised turkey leg, dark meat braised in there. You can do something fun with the breast. But if you're doing just that cliched center of the table, big old round bird, just go ahead and have a roast.
I was gonna say, sounds like tri-tip to me is the appropriate, the only appropriate option for a self-loving American patriot. Anything else is being a traitor to this nation. I don't actually think that, but I'm not gonna put those words in your mouth. But I appreciate the Thanksgiving recommendation. Thanksgiving next week, so go out and get yourself a nice and hearty tri-tip instead. Chef Gruel, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Thank you. TBT@tbsa.com is the email. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will be right back after the break to discuss SLOTUS, which is a term that I'm uncomfortable saying, but that's what the Second Lady of the United States is called, and among many other things. After the break, don't go away. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight. We're together. We're charting the course of America's cultural comeback. TBT@tbsa.com is the email if you'd like to send along your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. It's okay to be wrong. Just send it to our inbox, tbt@tbusa.com. You can also go leave a comment or subscribe to our Turning Point Tonight YouTube channel. Just type in JOBOB at pretty much any social media platform. You'll be able to find all of the content, especially that is exclusive to our online audience, because we just don't have enough time to talk about everything that needs to be talked about here on Real America's Voice. But what we do have time for, thankfully, is checking in with Turning Point's White House correspondent, Monica Paige. Monica, how you doing, first of all? Sadly, didn't make it into the dinner, as you mentioned last night, but I do want to ask you a couple questions about that. First, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Jobob. Yeah, I didn't get into the dinner, unfortunately. I knew that if I did, I'd probably be a bit of a menace because Cristiano Ronaldo was there. And I mean, I've never watched him play soccer, but I do enjoy watching him in general.
Wow. Okay. That's great. So before we get into that, FLOTUS and SLOTUS, which I'm uncomfortable with the name SLOTUS. It's kind of an odd thing to say, but are out and about supporting the movement. What have they got on the docket today before we talk about Cristiano Ronaldo?
Well, that's exactly right, Joe Bob. I mean, it's kind of rare to see the First Lady and the Second Lady travel together to do, these kinds of trips. But this was a trip that was meant to kind of honor the military troops and the families as well as we head into the holiday season, especially, we kick off the holiday season next week with Thanksgiving, and then we've got Christmas, New Year. So she took the time with the Second Lady to visit these kids and visit those families. They were specifically at Camp Lejeune and the Marine Corps Air Station in New River, North Carolina. They were both extremely excited to be there. You can tell by the looks on both of their faces. And honestly, they were greeted with a huge round of applause when they stepped into the gym on that campus. Extremely warm welcome, loud applause. Everyone was pretty excited to see them. And they honored the Marine Corps' for 250 years of service, expressing gratitude, like I just mentioned, to the Marines, those military families, and wanted to highlight specifically the essential role that these families do play in supporting our armed forces. And then we did see some clips circulating online of the First Lady, Melania, and of course, Usha Vance sitting in on student presentations. Students gave these kind of remarks involving the evolution of technology, knowing that the First Lady is super passionate about technology and artificial intelligence. So they put on this presentation for both of them, and we did also see Melania interacting with some of those young kids in preschool and kindergarten classes. Really, really cute stuff. So it's a nice act of, just to show that we respect our military, we respect the families, and they deserve, the highest regard, especially during the holiday season.
Totally, totally. It's great to see again FLOTUS and SLOTUS, even though I'm uncomfortable saying that, out there doing what they can to honor our troops. So an entire transition, Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, I couch this in the context that a bunch of the libs are saying the international community hates us. This is terrible. Cristiano Ronaldo, among many of the international community that were at the dinner last night, and I specifically bring him up because he is all over the White House's social media accounts, and also posted a picture of himself and I believe his wife, fiance, girlfriend, I'm not entirely sure what their relationship is, with the president on his own Instagram account, which has like 660 something million followers. What is kind of the, I guess the sense that the White House is getting of like what the international community actually thinks, as opposed to the libs saying everybody around the world hates us, this is all terrible? Clearly not, at least in this particular case.
It's kind of funny to see the dynamic, especially when you see these big name celebrities, soccer stars, or just sports stars, and just in general, music stars, actors coming to the White House specifically to see the President of the United States and honor all the hard work that he's been doing. It's interesting to see kind of how the reporters and just the mood on the ground of how, oh, we didn't really expect these people to be here. What did you expect them to be taking to social media and posting other black square or posting, some other identity politics against President Trump? So it takes a sense of bravery for somebody like Cristiano and his significant other to be at the White House, to be in the Oval Office, to take a tour of the White House. It really shows something that maybe there is a shift changing in our culture. I don't know if has already started. I don't know if it's already been there specifically with him, Cristiano, but to see people like him coming out and showing support. We just saw music artist Nicki Minaj as well at the United Nations with Ambassador Mike Waltz, really taking a big leap of faith when it comes to her fan base, and especially his fan base, Cristiano's fan base as well. It takes a sense of bravery to thank the President of the United States when you have a whole section of, the world, of your fan base, of the country that really hates President Trump. So, you really have to, see what's happening at the White House and be like, wow, something is changing. And hopefully these people can influence these younger generations, change some minds, change some hearts. But it's really exciting to see people, especially, ones you just don't expect, to be so involved in what's going on in our culture today.
Well, I thought it was really interesting too, because he again posted a picture of him and Trump on his Instagram account, and I clicked into the comments expecting to see, how dare you, scrolled through continuously all positive comments. I did come across one that had the vomit emojis, and lo and behold, freaking Andy Cohen is the only negative comment I saw on that, of all people. It's like, all right, Andy, sick, dude. Cool, thanks. But really, really interesting to see how much positive reaction there was to, again, an international superstar, to say the least, in Cristiano Ronaldo. Monica Paige, Turning Point's White House correspondent, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciated the chat.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. A lot of great discussion today with Senator Johnson, Andrew Gruel, and also, obviously, Monica Paige, who is fantastic at what she does. We're going to get into some spicy videos, interesting video content that, well, you're just going to want to see and you're not going to want to miss. tpt@tpusa.com is the email address. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is growing by leaps and bounds, and you don't want to be the only person in your friend group that doesn't subscribe, and therefore doesn't get the final segment of the show that it's just too much to talk about, so we can't fit it in here. We got to post it on the internet. Turning Point Tonight's YouTube channel, also Rumble, X, Facebook, Instagram, all the social media accounts. Just type in JOBOB. You'll be able to find all of it. We will be right back after the break with too much Leslie Jones to handle. Don't go away.
Sick of men telling me, oh, well, you hardcore. Yes, I am.
Can you handle it?
Oh, well, yeah. What you bringing to the table? I am the table. Understand why you wouldn't want a woman like me. I am successful, I'm rich, I can fight.
Okay. That's an old clip circulating around the internet now of comedian Leslie Jones, and I probably should have used air quotes around comedian, but it's amazing that lib women can't find a decent man nowadays. I wonder why that is. Okay, Leslie, thank you. Actually, more important things to get to, which I think are interesting and topical and must be talked about. California is effectively planning to, I know we've hit California quite a bit already on today's show, but guess what? They're going to come in for another kicking for this ridiculous ballot measure that Californians are trying to get on the November 2026 ballot, which effectively is a penalty for being rich. There is a ballot measure that could be put on the ballot in 2026 that says, hey, we are going to tax billionaires a one-time 5% tax on their net worth. In other words, hey, we are going to steal some of the money from you that is your net worth. Now, there's so many different caveats here, so many reasons why this is very, very stupid, but at the forefront of it is this idea that people have their net worth in cash. I'm not entirely sure if the proponents of this ballot measure know this, but Mark Zuckerberg is worth however many $1 billion. Actually, it lists it in here. $251 billion his net worth is. He doesn't have $251 billion in cash, but what this would effectively do is say, hey, you got to pay $12.5 billion in tax just this year. By the way, this is just in 2026. If the ballot measure passes in the state of California, he will be obligated to pay 5% of his net worth, which I guarantee you he does not have in cash, to the state, but it's just going to be a one-time thing, and it's just for the ultra-rich. Of course, that is what they're going to say. Mission creep is a thing, as we discussed with Chef Gruel earlier. Well, the building is only going to cost $500 million. Oh no, it turned into $5 billion. But we're only going to tax this one-time fee for the billionaires. Also, we're going to do it the following year, and it's now going to be to 100 millionaires. And the following year, we're also going to do the same thing. It's just going to be millionaires that are going to have to. It's just millionaires, which, if you own a property in California, chances are you are a millionaire by default. So are you going to have to pay 5% of that, which you don't have in cash? It's strictly held in assets. Probably speaking, you probably will. Nobody believes that this is going to be a one-time thing. I understand it. People are like, stick it to the rich. But where do you think this goes from here? Do you think possibly in a legislative body that is California, where there have been numerous times where they go, oh, we're just going to do it to these people, and now all of a sudden they do it to Social Security, by the way, is perfect example of something that was only going to specifically benefit the bottom 10%, and lo and behold, now it dominates the entirety of the population. That's going to happen in California. I feel like I just wanted to put that on your radar. If it happens in California, California will continue its tradition of being a laboratory of democracy, which other states can point to go to, don't be that. That's probably a bad thing to be. In an entirely different transition, but I thought this was actually interesting, especially considering the media coverage on both sides of the spectrum here. Pope Leo didn't really give an interview. He just kind of was walking and was asked a question about immigration, in which he said, well, a lot of things, which I'll play you the very brief minute-long clip of him talking. But interestingly enough, both sides have said, yes, Pope Leo is on our side. Which side is actually correct? We'll talk about it after this clip plays. I believe it's cut 5.
U.S. bishops have made a very strong statement about the deportation and detention of migrants. What do you think of it? And they kind of said that you've got their back. Were you behind that?
Well, I've made some statements about that already. I appreciate very much what the bishops have said. I think it's a very important statement. I would invite, especially all Catholics, but people of goodwill, to listen carefully to what they said. I think we have to look for ways of treating people humanely, treating people with the dignity that they have. If people are in the United States illegally, there are ways to treat that. There are courts. There's a system of justice. I think there are a lot of problems in the system. No one has said that the United States should have open borders. I think every country has a right to determine who and how and when people enter. But when people are living good lives, and many of them for 10, 15, 20 years, to treat them in a way that is extremely disrespectful, to say the least, and there's been some violence, unfortunately. I think that the bishops have been very clear in what they said. And I think that I would just invite all people in the United States to listen to them. Thank you.
Oh, he's good. And you look, this is not like I support the Pope, I love the Pope, I don't hate the Pope. This is not any of that. That was a very politician-esque response in which he didn't really say much definitively, which is kind of the point, because the libs are saying, look, Pope Leo says that, well, you have to be able to treat people with dignity and respect. If you watch it back, he actually didn't say that. He said, you have to have a system which, if people are here illegally, there's got to be some amount of dignity, which is why you should listen to what the cardinal said. He didn't actually make a definitive statement there. But what he did say definitively is that every country has the obligation, has the right to decide who enters their country, why they enter the country, and when they enter the country, which I think is the conservative argument, obviously. So when you have people take what he said and start trying to play both sides of it, you got to figure out which side is right. When it comes to the humanity of deportations, he mentions, well, there's court systems, there's legal justification, and all of that needs to be sorted out, which is correct. I don't know how the libs looked at that and went, look, Pope Leo is standing up for our side, which says anybody in the country gets to say, anybody can come in the country, and we don't care about any of the illegal criminals in the country. We don't want to enforce the law. Because that's clearly not what he said. And again, I recognize that he's giving somewhat of a politician answer, but the only thing he definitively says outside of, go listen to the bishops. He doesn't say take their advice wholeheartedly. He says just, hear them out, which is totally fine, which, by the way, I don't want to bury the lead here. Some bishops came out and made some strong statements. Pope Leo's basically saying, go ahead and listen to them if you want. Come to your own conclusions. But what he definitively said is that countries have the right to enforce border policy. Nobody thinks that there should be an open borders. And even though both sides are claiming a win here, I think it's a win on the conservative side of the aisle, especially when you have cases like this. This one was floating around the internet that I thought was really interesting. Glenn, go ahead and pull up graphic 1. This is a photo of a tweet of some guy named Eric Lee. I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea who this guy is. Eric Lee, Atty. Sounds like an attorney. Great. He says, this is Roman, impronounceable name. I'm not even gonna attempt it. He's lived here since he was 5. Tomorrow, he'll be taken from his U.S. citizen wife and 2 young daughters, deported to Ukraine, where he'll be conscripted into the army. Please share this CNN article. Now, the tears might be flowing for some of the bleeding heart libs out there who think this is very, very terrible. And I can hold some sympathy for his wife and 2 daughters. That is a tough situation to handle. But what CNN didn't point out is what our friends at Libs of TikTok pointed out. According to them, this guy has also had a long criminal history, including assault with a deadly weapon, multiple counts of burglary, multiple counts of carjacking with a firearm, trespassing on private property, multiple counts of taking a vehicle without the owner's consent, possession of hypodermic needle/syringe, and receiving stolen property, multiple counts of conspiracy to commit a crime. Interesting how they didn't point that out in the very sob story piece there they had on CNN, and that attorney, a guy who I'd never heard of, also retweeted. But for some reason, conveniently, all that stuff seems to get left out. Now, again, like I said, I probably, with Pope Leo, can hold some sympathy for his family. That's a very tough situation. And very difficult to make the case for somebody who has this long of a rap sheet. No, they should totally stay in the country. That's a totally fine. We shouldn't even look into it any further. What is being done on the immigration front seems to be very incoherent with the law, with the system, with the courts, with all of the appropriate steps that need to be taken to get criminal illegals out of the country. Yes, there are going to be sob stories, and it is up to the American people to recognize that there are nuance to many of these conversations, specifically around many of these individuals, and eventually the rule of law will win the day. We can all hope. We try here on Turning Point tonight. We really, really try. Maybe we should stop. It's one last point. I have never at any point claimed to be a journalist. I don't, that's not in my repertoire. I don't have any training or credentials that would call me a journalist. I've never said I am a journalist. It's just not something that I do. And I feel like just by default, I kind of hold some of the same journalistic ethics, journalistic integrity elements, or at least I try to the best of my ability. Maybe I should stop. Maybe we should stop just even trying to be fair and honest about things, or at the very least, I'm not serious, by the way. I'm not actually going to stop being fair and honest, because that's the only way you get people to believe what you're saying, right? But also, maybe instead of like researching anything, we should just start saying stuff. Because if people in Congress just start saying stuff without any due diligence, without any background checks, without anything, maybe we should too. Maybe I'm wasting my time just cramming hours before the show. Just, is this actually legit? What are we saying here? What's going on in this particular instance? Maybe I should just stop, because people like Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, if they aren't doing it, why should I? This is Jasmine Crockett on the floor of the House talking about people who received money from Jeffrey Epstein. Play cut 2.
Folks who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly: Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio. I just want to be clear. If this is the standard that we're going to make, just know we're going to expose it all. And just know that the FEC filings, they are available for everybody to review. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So Lee Zeldin was named in there. A bunch of people were named in there. And he said, different Jeffrey Epstein lady. And she did say, my team did their research. She said very quickly, so maybe she knew that, hey, maybe some of this wasn't as legit as she thought it was. My team did their research, and we found out that Jeffrey Epstein was not actually the same Jeffrey Epstein. Oh my gosh. If they're not going to try, should I try? Lee Zeldin, I don't want to bury the lead here. Lee Zeldin tweeted, yeah, different guy. Like, total, people have the same name. It's not a common name, but it's also not uncommon. I'll tell you what, Jasmine Crockett, if you find any Jobobs on any of that list, or Jobob Tylafi specifically, I can guarantee you there's not any of those out there. That's me. And people, for better or worse, are going to be tied to me, because there are not many other people like that. But you could also you could find a ton of different people that have the same names. Unless you're talking about the specific person in question, maybe don't bring that to the congressional floor. And if you're not going to try, why am I trying? I've put too much time and effort into doing all of this stuff. I should stop. I don't know. I feel like at some point, I hope that the American people kind of catch up to all of this stuff. And because really, you're only able to do this if the voters allow it, right? If the voters in Jasmine Crockett's district say, yeah, we're not buying any of that stuff anymore, we're just going to vote you out of office, then the problem is solved. But it really, at the end of the day, the responsibility ends with the voters. They're the people that the elected official have to cater towards. They're the constituency that puts them into the seat that they hold. And if they don't care that the due diligence being done by the Congresswoman is minimal at best, what hope do we have for society? Producer Glenn has unmuted himself. He probably has some strong, stern thoughts and some even hand gestures that he was making off camera that he probably won't make on camera. I can tell you what those hand gestures were. But Producer Glenn, your thoughts?
I don't know that this is the case, but I'm 99% sure. They just did a Control F search of a document of all the donations to big name Republicans. And as soon as they saw the two words in the order they wanted, they put it on their document and handed it straight to Jasmine Crockett. It is the lowest form of research. It's like, you've seen the mugs. I don't know. I went to seminary ages ago, and people be like, your Google search doesn't replace my theology degree. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't replace much of anything, because you get results like this, where... Yeah, it's obvious. There's two people named Jeffrey Epstein. There's probably a lot of people named Jeffrey Epstein, and then when one of them does something really, really bad, the others are like, "Oh shoot,
I'm also named Jeffrey Epstein."
Right.
There's been times on this show where we've pulled videos and played them in the recording sequence of this show, and I'll be watching the video, commenting on it while I'm doing that. You're feverishly typing away on your keyboard, and then kind of go. I know the Glenn face of like, can't do that because that's not real. And it's happened a couple times, right? It's happened a couple times where you're like, actually,
there's some slick ones out there.
That was satire. And again, there's something to be said about the fact that sometimes you can't tell. Like the Babylon Bee has probably the hardest job in media because
there was that one comedian who was pretending to be like this guy who got from some government benefits, or he was pretending he got fired from Microsoft, but it's just some comedian doing a bit. But it was so like representative of some real life reactions, even though that one in particular was satire.
But we did either mention it or we pulled the clip entirely, right? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we shouldn't do that anymore. Maybe we should just run with it, because if nobody cares, why would I? I don't actually think that. I'm not actually going to do that. We are going to try our best as a
Well, we're conservatives. We care about the truth. We actually want to represent reality with the words we choose. So that's it. It's we think we have good points to make, but we're not gonna take that step and just be careless with those words. We have to do our due diligence, even though we're not technically journalists. We do handle important matters. So I think we do a good job with that, with the gifts we have.
What I was going to say, in closing here, the comedian theologian duo that puts together the format of this show, we hold ourselves to a higher integrity bar than members of Congress, and that is probably saying more than we could actually say with words in the current political environment that we currently exist in. So that's that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you don't already. If you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, any of the social media platforms, appreciate your subscription and continued engagement with the content that we actually work somewhat diligently to produce for you every single day. TVT@tvZ.com is the email address. Also, submit a comment wherever you're watching this. We'll see you tomorrow. One last point. God bless America.